seeing a significant increase in car hijackings, and that's according to the latest Insurance Barometer report by Santam. It's found that hijacking and theft claims have skyrocketed to unsustainable levels. Criminals are also shifting from older, low-value vehicles to the new high-value bakkies and SUVs. Remember, it was much easier to break into one of the old cars compared to the new ones. However, that trend seems to be flipping around. Santam's head of commercial lines at Thabo Twalo joining us this morning. Thabo, good to have you on ENCA. Appreciate the time. What do we mean by unsustainable levels? We know the numbers are bad, but what do we mean by unsustainable? Good morning.
Good morning, Gareth, and good morning to your listeners. Gareth, I mean, if I just give you a sense of our numbers at Santam. So if we just take 2019 as a base year and compare that to 2022, so if we just look at the incident of theft or the value of theft claims of high value SUVs, the number increased sixfold in that 3-year period. So this is something that was totally unsustainable. And for us at Santam, we basically had the option of increasing our premiums to our clients sixfold, or finding an alternative solution. And in terms of alternative solutions, we basically ended up, trying to insist that our clients install tracking devices on all their vehicles. And in some instances, depending on the make and model of the vehicle, we even insisted that our clients install 2 tracking devices in order to try and mitigate this increasing cost of claims.
I didn't know you could have 2 tracking devices installed into a vehicle. I didn't know that was actually possible. Would you do that with 2 different tracking companies, or the same tracking company, Thabo, just with 2 tracking devices? Sorry, you just caught my attention on that.
So both options actually work. So our preference would normally be to use maybe 2 different companies with 2 different technologies. However, even if it's the same company with just 2 different tracking devices, it can also be an extra layer of protection, because the criminal syndicates have also found ways, in some instances, of trying to jam the signal from these tracking devices. But if you've got 2, it just complicates that effort a little bit more.
I never thought of that. It's actually a very clever idea. I'm curious, though, as an insurer, if I installed a second tracking device in my car, am I going to pay less on my premium?
Absolutely. In fact, even with one tracking device, I mean, the offer that we made to our clients was to literally reduce the premium from the moment that they confirm that they've installed a tracking device.
I want to talk about the vehicles most at risk, because in my introduction to you, and I saw you nodding while I was talking, that the old trend was to go after the older vehicles, slightly less technology. I imagine it's the old cars that still have the key for the ignition. You're not pressing a button and using fingerprint ID and all these fancy toys these days. But that trend has now shifted. It doesn't matter what vehicle and how new. These hijackers and thieves know how to get in. What vehicles are we talking about?
So, Gareth, you'll forgive me, I'll stay away from mentioning brands, but suffice it to say, we are talking about high-valued SUVs that are quite common on our roads. And what these criminal enterprises are able to do is they're able to clone the signal, the key signal, depending on the make of vehicle, and gain entry to the vehicle, without actually needing your key. So that's one method. Also, we see, the old forms of hijacking also becoming a little bit more prevalent. And these vehicles are quite sought after outside of South Africa. So a lot of them actually end up outside of our borders, which is probably explains why the incident of crime has gone up significantly. Interestingly enough, though, what we've also found is that sometimes, yes, there's old technology that's available that can also make it very difficult for these for these criminal enterprises. Just a simple example. I spoke about I spoke about the multiple tracking devices. and also some of the old school tracking devices that maybe rely on GSM technology, these are able to sometimes, let's say, fool the criminals, which is maybe something that we would not have anticipated.
Yeah, quite right, because obviously the criminal syndicates, they've improved their technology for the new vehicles, but maybe it's now out of date for the older vehicles. That's very clever. I know you can't mention the names because you work for an insurer, but I'm very happy to do it because according to Fidelity, the private security company, those watching at home, I'm just going to run through their numbers that they've released as well, at least the vehicles that they're talking about. It's the Toyota Hilux, the Toyota Fortuner, the Toyota Corolla, the VW Polo, but that's been on the list for a long time, and now also the Nissan NP200. It's those little single cab bakkies from Nissan. And I know you can't mention that at all, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. But maybe you can, Thabo, just as I start saying goodbye to you, apart from the vehicles that I just mentioned, is it worse in some provinces, in some areas than others? Can you compare province to province? You don't have to go through all of them, just which is the worst and at most risk for an insurer such as yourself? Which province is the worst?
Absolutely. So, I mean, it probably comes as no surprise that Gauteng and KZN have much higher incidence of theft and hijacking than your other provinces like the Northern Cape, Free State, etc. So I think there's definitely a difference between the provinces.
And I'll maybe leave this as a very last question, just because I can hear someone at home probably shouting at me, asking me to ask you, if someone was to buy a new Toyota Hilux, a new Fortuner, a new Corolla, a new VW Polo, or a Nissan NP200, are insurance companies going to put a higher premium up because they're more at risk? Yes, weighed off against the fact you can get the tracking devices. But I imagine as an insurer, you're going to be charging more for insurance on those cars, aren't you? It's only to cover your basis, isn't it?
I mean, I think it's fair to say that different vehicles, makes of vehicles have different risk profiles. So yes, there is a differentiation in our premium charge. But I think what we try to do is to encourage these security interventions to mitigate that risk so that the premiums are still at a level that is sustainable for our customers and ourselves. Gareth, I hope that satisfies you.
Yeah, it's basically a nice insurance way of saying, yes, we're going to charge you more if you drive a high-risk vehicle. But it makes sense. Of course it does. I just wanted to make sure. Risk profile, that's the fancy term I was looking for. I couldn't think fast enough. Thabo, thank you very much. Indeed, it seems like it's obvious, but it's really, really not as well. So if you are one of those people driving what you would consider a high-risk vehicle, it's your SUVs, your bakkies, especially your 4x4s, I didn't know you can actually put a second tracker in a vehicle. It might be worth you looking at, especially if it's one of those high-risk vehicles. Let's take